During my parents' 40th anniversary party, my older brother grabbed the microphone. He looked straight at me and said, "You think you're better than us just because you make more money?" I laughed and said, "No, I know I am." Everyone gasped. But that wasn't even the shocking part. What I revealed next made our parents cry on stage. I always knew my older brother, Ray, resented me. But I never thought he'd air it out in front of everyone at my parents' 40th anniversary party. I definitely never thought I'd be the one to finally expose the secret that had been eating at our family for years. It started as a celebration. A beautiful, well-planned evening at an elegant banquet hall in downtown Chicago. My parents, George and Marilyn, stood on stage, beaming as their friends and family gathered to honor them. 40 years of marriage. A lifetime of sacrifice. I had just finished giving a heartfelt speech, one that took me hours to write, when Ray grabbed the microphone from its stand. He was a little drunk, maybe more than a little. His eyes were glassy, his grip too tight, and his voice just slurred enough to let everyone know he was feeling bold. He turned to face me, standing by the head table, and sneered. "You think you're better than us just because you make more money?" Silence. A heavy, thick silence that swallowed the entire room. My mother's smile faltered. My father's jaw clenched. My cousins shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I picked up my champagne flute, took a slow sip, then set it down just as deliberately. And then I laughed. Not a full laugh. Just a short, dry chuckle. "No," I said, looking him right in the eye. "I know I am." The entire banquet hall gasped. Someone in the back whispered, "Jesus Christ." But that wasn't even the shocking part. What I revealed next made my parents cry on stage. Ray and I had never been close. Not even as kids. He was 4 years older, the kind of older brother who saw me as more of a nuisance than a sibling. He wasn't cruel. Not exactly. But he never let me forget that he was first. Firstborn, first priority, first in line for everything. Our parents worked themselves to the bone for us. My dad was a mechanic, my mom a cashier at a grocery store. We didn't have much, but they stretched every dollar to make sure we had what we needed. I learned early on that if I wanted anything extra, I had to earn it myself. I worked hard in school, got scholarships, and went to law school. Became the first in our family to really make it. Ray had a different philosophy. When he didn't get into college, he blamed the system. When he couldn't hold a job, he blamed his bosses. When his life didn't go the way he wanted, he blamed me. "Mom and Dad always favored you," he'd say. "They didn't push you as hard as they pushed me. You got lucky." That last one always pissed me off the most. Luck had nothing to do with it. I spent years biting my tongue, avoiding the fights, try to keep the peace. But that night, when Ray grabbed the mic and turned a family celebration into another one of his grievances, I was done. "You want to do this now?" I said, shaking my head. "Fine, let's do this." I stepped toward the stage, locking eyes with him. "You all want to know why Ray has such a problem with me?" I gestured toward the guests, their faces caught between curiosity and discomfort. "Why does he think I look down on him?" Ray rolled his eyes. "Here we go. It's because he knows I know the truth." A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mother shifted in her chair, her hands clasped together. My father's fingers twitched against his knee. Ray's smirk wavered. "What the hell are you talking about?" I took a deep breath. "I'm talking about the money, Ray." His face went pale. The room shifted. You could feel it. I turned to the audience. When Ray was 20, he wasn't just figuring things out like he told everyone. He was gambling. A collective murmur. Someone sucked in a breath. My mother's eyes widened. "Caleb," she whispered. "Don't." But I couldn't stop. "Not anymore. He stole from Mom and Dad," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He drained their savings account, the one they had been building for years so they could finally buy a house of their own. A pin could have dropped in that room and shattered like glass." Ray snapped. "Shut the hell up, Caleb." His voice cracked. He stepped forward like he wanted to hit me. I didn't flinch. "You don't think I know?" I said, voice steady. "You don't think I remember how Dad had to work double shifts at the shop to make up for what you lost?" I turned to my parents, my heart pounding. "You never told anyone," I said. "You covered for him. You took out loans to fix what he did." I let out a humorless laugh. "And you know what? I paid them back. Every cent. With my better-than-you money." Silence. My mother started crying. Not quite delicate tears. Full body, heartbroken sobs. My father just sat there, silent, frozen, his hands gripping the sides of his chair like he was holding on for dear life. Ray had nothing. No defense. No excuse. His mouth opened, then closed. His fists clenched at his sides. His face was red, not just with anger, but with shame. My mother wiped at her face, her hands trembling. "Ray," she whispered, "is this true?" He didn't answer. That was enough to answer enough. The weight of my mother's question hung in the air like an anvil over Ray's head. He stood there, frozen, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. His eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape, an excuse, a way to twist this back on me. But there wasn't one. His silence was deafening. "Ray," my father said this time, his voice lower, rougher. Tell me the truth. Ray let out a short, humorless chuckle and shook his head. What the hell does it matter now? My mother gasped like she had been slapped. My father exhaled slowly, the deep kind of breath he only ever took when he was trying not to explode. It matters, I said, stepping closer, because mom and dad spent years struggling to recover for what you did. Because dad was one accident away from losing his damn job. Because mom had to pick up extra shifts just to keep food on the table while you were out there. I gestured wildly, playing poker with money that wasn't yours. My mother covered her mouth with both hands, shaking her head. Ray, she whispered. He didn't look at her. I didn't. He ran a hand through his hair, took a step back. You don't know the full story, Caleb. Oh, really? I scoffed. What's the full story then, Ray? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were a selfish, reckless a-hole who let our parents suffer for his own mistakes. He lunged, or at least he tried to. Someone grabbed him, my uncle, maybe, or one of my dad's friends. I barely moved. I wasn't afraid of him. Enough, my father said, his voice sharp. The kind of voice that stopped us both cold when we were kids. Ray breathed hard through his nose, his chest rising and falling like a bull about to charge. His face was twisted, anger, guilt, shame, something he didn't want to name. But he still wouldn't apologize, wouldn't own up to it. Instead, he turned the blame back on me. You think you're so much better, he spat, his voice low but shaking. You're so damn smug, standing up there like some kind of hero. You don't know what it's like to struggle, Caleb. You had everything handed to you. I barked out a laugh. A real, sharp, exhausted laugh. Handed to me? I repeated, my voice rising. Are you out of your mind? I busted my ass, Ray. I worked, I studied, I sacrificed. While you were out blowing money you didn't have, I was up till 3 in the morning studying for exams that could change my life. He scoffed, but I wasn't done. I didn't have weekends. I didn't have vacations. I didn't even have a goddamn social life because I was too busy making sure I never had to live like this again. And what did you do? I threw up my hands. You pissed it all away, and then you let mom and dad suffer for it. Ray's lip curled like he wanted to argue, but he had nothing, because I was right. My mother sobbed into my father's shoulder, her whole body trembling. My father rubbed her back, staring at Ray with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not disappointed, something worse. Recognition, like he was finally seeing Ray for who he really was. Ray looked at my mother then, really looked, and for the first time that night, I saw something like regret in his face. But it was too late for regret. Too late for anything, really. Ray stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight, but there was a flicker of something behind his anger now. Fear. He wasn't afraid of me. He never had been. But he was afraid of the weight of his own actions crashing down all at once. He looked at my mother, at the way she trembled against my father's shoulder. He looked at my father, whose face was drawn in a way I had never seen before, like he had aged 10 years in a matter of minutes. And then he looked at the rest of the room. People were whispering. Eyes darted between him and me, some filled with judgment, others with pity. A few of our cousins were sitting frozen in their chairs, wide-eyed, like they were watching something they shouldn't be seeing but couldn't look away from. Ray let out a long breath and shook his head. I don't need to listen to this. He turned on his heel, stepping off the stage like he was about to walk out. Yeah, run away, I said, arms crossed. That's what you do, right? When things get hard. He froze. I could see the tension in his back, the way his shoulders lifted just slightly as he fought the urge to turn around. I stepped forward. That's what you did when you lost everything, wasn't it? You just left. Didn't tell mom and dad what happened until they noticed their account was drained. And even then, you let them believe it was some mistake. Some banking errors. You lied to them. Ray turned back around, eyes burning. What the hell do you want from me, Caleb? Huh? His voice was raw now. You wanted to grovel? To beg for forgiveness? To what? Stand here and let you tear me apart in front of the whole damn family? I tilted my head. I want you to take responsibility. Responsibility? He scoffed. That's rich coming from you. You always acted like you were some golden boy, like you could do no wrong. Maybe if mom and dad hadn't put you on a pedestal your whole life, I wouldn't have. My father slammed his fist on the table. The entire room jumped. Stop, he said, his voice low, commanding. I turned and looked at him. So did Ray. His hand was still on the table, shaking slightly. His face was pale, his jaw tight. You are not going to stand here and pretend that any of this is Caleb's fault, my father said. Ray opened his mouth, but my father cut him off. No, he said, sharper this time. You listened to me, your mother, and I gave you every opportunity to fix your mistakes. We covered for you. We protected you. And not once did you try to make it right. Not once. Ray swallowed. Dad, I know, my father repeated. His voice was still low, but it held the kind of weight that made it impossible to ignore. You don't get to talk your way out of this. Ray's face twisted, his body tight with frustration, but he didn't argue. He couldn't. For the first time in his life, he was trapped, and I think he finally realized it. The weight of it all seemed to hit him at once. His shoulders slumped just slightly. His gaze dropped to the floor. I almost thought, for a split second, that he was going to apologize, that he was finally going to admit it. But then his expression hardened again. He let out a short, bitter laugh. Of course, he muttered under his breath. Of course, you're all taking his side. Something in my mother seemed to break at those words. She lifted her head, her tear-streaked face twisted with something I had never seen from her before. Disgust. You still don't get it, she said softly. Ray blinked, caught off guard. You think this is about sides? My mother shook her head, exhaling shakily. This is about what you did, what you put us through, and you still won't take responsibility for it. Ray swallowed, looking at her like he had never seen her before. She wasn't pleading with him. She wasn't comforting him. She was looking at him like she didn't know who he was anymore. Ray's eyes flicked to my father, to me, to the room full of people still watching. He licked his lips, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. I don't need this, he finally muttered. I don't need any of you. And then he turned and walked out. This time I didn't stop him. Nobody did. Ray shoved past a few relatives on his way out, his footsteps heavy against the marble floor. The hall door swung open with a loud thud, and just like that, he was gone. The silence he left behind was suffocating. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if we were all waiting for something, anything, to break the unbearable tension. I turned back toward my parents. My mother sat completely still, her hands clenched together in her lap. Her breathing was uneven, her eyes red and distant. My father, usually the rock in any situation, looked as if someone had carved 10 years off his life in the last 10 minutes. I felt a sudden, deep pang of guilt. Not because I had exposed Ray, not because I had finally told the truth, but because I had done it here, in front of everyone. Maybe I should have waited. Maybe I should have confronted him in private. Maybe, Caleb, my mother whispered, her voice barely audible. I snapped my focus back to her. She blinked a few times, then exhaled shakily. Is it true, she asked, that you paid everything back? I nodded. Yes. She let out a choked sound, half a sob, half a breath, and covered her mouth with her hands again. Oh my God, she whispered. Dad's hand was still resting on the table, his fingers flexing slightly, as if he were trying to process the weight of it all. You knew, he said, voice rough. You knew how much we were struggling back then. Of course I knew, I said. I could see it every time I came home. I saw how tired you both were, how you barely had anything left after paying the bills. I couldn't just... I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. I couldn't just watch that happen. My father didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, without a word, he reached over and grabbed my shoulder, gripping it firmly. It wasn't much, but from him, it meant everything. Somewhere behind me, a chair scraped against the floor. I turned to see my Aunt Vivian, my mother's older sister, rising from her seat. She was staring at the doors Ray had disappeared through, her lips pressed into a tight line. Well, she finally said, breaking the silence. I always knew that boy was trouble. A few hushed gasps, some murmurs of agreement. My mother flinched. Aunt Viv, I warned, not because she was wrong, but because my mother wasn't ready to hear it. But Vivian wasn't one to sugarcoat anything. She crossed her arms and let out a sharp exhale. I'm just saying, we all knew something was off with Ray. The gambling, the excuses, the way he always managed to slip away from responsibility while the rest of us had to pick up after him. She looked at my mother directly. You covered for him, Marilyn. For years. My mother squeezed her eyes shut. Aunt Vivian softened slightly, but didn't back down. Maybe now, finally, you can stop making excuses for him. The words hit my mother like a physical blow. She inhaled sharply, her chest rising and falling unevenly. Dad rubbed her back again, but even he wasn't defending Ray anymore. I watched as my mother, the woman who had spent her whole life protecting her firstborn son, slowly seemed to realize that she couldn't do it anymore. She shouldn't do it anymore. And yet, despite everything, I could see it in her eyes. The heartbreak, the guilt, the way she still wanted to fix it. It's my fault, she said suddenly, her voice cracking. I frowned. Mom, I let it happen, she whispered. She turned to my father. We let it happen, George. We let Ray get away with everything. We always made excuses for him, always convinced ourselves that he would grow up, that he would change, that one day he'd finally realize what he was doing to us. She shook her head, her breath uneven, but he never did. Dad didn't say anything, but the way his jaw clenched told me that deep down he agreed. For years, they had enabled Ray. Not because they didn't love him, but because they did. Too much. More than he ever deserved. And this moment, this shattered reality, was the price they were paying for it. A lump formed in my throat, but I forced myself to swallow it down. This wasn't about me. This was about them. About finally coming to terms with the son they had spent decades protecting. And the fact that he had never, not once, protected them back. The days after the anniversary were quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made you realize just how much space a person had taken up when they were around, even if it was mostly filled with lies and excuses. Ray didn't call, didn't text, didn't come back. At first, I think my mother believed he'd apologize, that he'd show up at their doorstep with some half-baked excuse, trying to talk his way out of it like he always did. But a week passed, then two, then a month, and reality started to sink in. Ray wasn't coming back. Not to say sorry, not to fix anything, not to face the consequences of what he'd done. But if he thought he was going to walk away from all of this untouched, he was wrong. Because I had a plan, and I was finally going to give him the reckoning he deserved. One thing about Ray, he never paid people back. He borrowed money from family like it was his own personal ATM, always swearing he'd get it back to them soon. He had taken money from my parents, my cousins, even a few of my dad's old friends. And then there was the money from me. I had never told anyone before that night, but I'd spent years covering my parents' debts, paying off the loans they had taken to clean up Ray's mess. I had repaired what he had broken. But now, it was time for Ray to pay up. I started by digging through everything I could find on him. Ray had always been sloppy with money. Credit cards maxed out, unpaid parking tickets, loans from people he shouldn't have borrowed from. And then I found it, a legal document. Turns out, a few years ago, Ray had taken out a business loan, a big one he had never bothered to pay back. And the kicker? He had used my parents' house as collateral. That's right. If Ray defaulted on the loan, which, spoiler alert, he had, the lender had the right to come after my parents' home. My mother and father had no idea. Ray had forged my dad's signature, lied to the bank, took the money, and gambled it away. And now, because of his reckless stupidity, my parents were one missed payment away from losing the only home they had ever owned. I saw red. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice, about revenge. So, I did what Ray never expected me to do. I took him to court. I filed everything. Fraud, forgery, financial damages. It didn't take long for my lawyer to track down Ray's whereabouts. He had moved in with some woman, probably his latest investment scheme, and was living off her money now. But the second he got served with the lawsuit, he realized he was in deep, deep trouble. He called my parents first, begged, pleaded, said it was all a misunderstanding. Mom almost caved. But Dad, for the first time in his life, he said no. No more excuses. No more bailing him out. He told Ray, "You made your choices. Now live with them." Ray called me next, screaming, cursing me out, calling me a selfish bastard, saying I was trying to ruin his life. I let him rant, let him get every single insult out of his system. And then I said, very calmly, "See you in court, Ray." And I hung up. Ray tried everything to avoid the court date. He missed the first hearing, then the second, but I wasn't backing down. And when he finally showed up, it looked like hell. His new girlfriend had left him. His money was gone. His luck had finally run out. I sat across from him in that courtroom, completely calm, because I knew I had already won. Ray didn't have a lawyer, couldn't afford one. So when the judge asked him to defend himself, he had nothing, no excuse, no defense, just the realization that for the first time in his life, his words weren't going to save him. The court ruled in my favor. Ray was ordered to pay back everything, every cent he had taken from my parents, every dollar of debt he had tied to their names. And since he didn't have the money, the court seized his assets instead. His car? Gone. His bank account? Frozen. His freedom to run from his mistakes? Over. He had spent years treating my parents like they were his safety net. And now, he was finally on his own. A week after the court ruling, Ray called me again. Not screaming this time. Not angry. Just defeated. "I have nothing left," he said, voice hollow. "I lost everything, Caleb." I leaned back in my chair, staring out my office window. The Chicago skyline stretched before me, glittering and unforgiving. I thought about the years he had stolen from my parents, the nights my mother cried herself to sleep, the pain he had never once apologized for. And then, finally I spoke. "Good," I said, and I hung up. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Ray had spent years trying to tear me down, but in the end, he had destroyed himself, and I didn't feel bad about it. Not one bit.